The Polar Express is a Christmas icon, a magnificent steam train flying through the snow carrying passengers to and from the North Pole, and if you're lucky you might just see Santa riding along too. There was, however, another lesser-known train that Santa used to ride on in the southern hemisphere, one that ended up with poor Saint Nick getting a tad sunburnt. The construction of the Trans-Australian Railway was a massive ordeal, taking 5 years to complete, with workers having to deal with the blazing heat and barren landscape of the outback. Opened in 1917, the line connected Western Australia to Port Augusta in South Australia, finally connecting Perth to the rest of Australia's cities. Because the route travelled through miles of unpopulated territory, small settlements had to be established along the line so that workers could serve and maintain the railway. These settlements were very isolated, with families relying on Commonwealth Railways to provide provisions once a week from the tea and sugar trains. It was the duty of Commonwealth Railways to ensure the well-being of not just these remote workers, but their families too, helping fulfill their social and recreational needs as well as providing food and drinks. During Christmas in 1928, Commissioner Norris Bell generously gifted an East-West Railway game to the children of these communities, and after receiving many letters thanking them for the gifts, the railway carried on giving Christmas presents to the children for years afterwards, these taking the form of cakes and sweets as well as books, small toys, instruments and other recreational items. Festivities were also organised to take place in nearby towns so families could get together and enjoy the holiday season, though by the early 1940s, rationing due to the war meant the railway couldn't afford to be as generous. Eventually, in 1957, a railway wellness officer managed to convince employee W.J. Crow to dress up as Father Christmas when handing out gifts, with the railway serving children sweets and cakes as they got the chance to meet Santa. As nice as this idea was in theory, in practice it became quite an ordeal for Crow. Christmas Down Under takes place during the height of the Australian summer, and so Crow got very hot very quickly once dressed in the full Santa outfit. The slow-moving train was delayed, and combined with a heat wave, Crow described it as close to an inferno. The delays meant the train didn't arrive at some of its intended stops until 3 AM, with the crew simply leaving the gifts and an apology note before moving on to the next stop. Nonetheless, Crow appeared as Santa at all the stops he could, visiting a hostel and a hospital in costume along the way before the journey was over. With how well received the visit from Santa was, the railway decided to dress him up again the following year, but it seems Crow wasn't as keen to reprise the role in 1959, and so the costume was worn by driver Alf Harris instead. Another driver, Mr. W. McConnell, dressed up as Santa in 1960, but Harris came back in 1961 and took over the role of Father Christmas, donning the suit every Christmas for years afterwards. Harris's visit became part of the gift-giving tradition, and in 1972 a special carriage was put together to be attached to the tea and sugar train, the inside decorated to look like Santa's grotto. I feel the need to emphasise how little many of the people living in these settlements had since they were so isolated, and so these Christmas visits were one of the few times a year they'd receive gifts, making them all the more special for the children. Harris continued to play Santa even after he retired as a driver, seeming to enjoy dressing up for the holiday and becoming a minor celebrity on the Commonwealth Railway, eventually gaining the nickname of Santa in the Spinifex, but he was most well known as Sunburnt Santa. In 1990, he was awarded the Medal of the Order of Australia for his services to children in remote and isolated areas, saying, "I've received all the rewards I want over the past 29 years after seeing the looks on the kiddies' faces." He followed up by saying he'd continue doing it as long as he was able to, but alas, it wasn't long before his days playing Santa were over. Harris had played his role as Santa for 36 years when the tea and sugar service ceased operation in 1996. What he did afterwards isn't really known, but it's likely he spent his next few Christmases in retirement away from the scorching hot sun. So next time you're thinking about the Polar Express, take a moment to remember its cousin down under, and how it reminds us that Christmas isn't always about gift giving, but making the world a little more magical for those who need it most. Subscribe for more.